What is happening out there, Roto Scouts basketball fans? How you guys doing, gang? Sorry for the couple minutes late start there. Just rerunning a couple sims, got some new ownership down, so just wanted to run it against the most current stuff. Not that I love where we're at with some of it, but looks a little low to me in some spots. But we'll talk about it. Worst case scenario, we'll be talking about being way over the field on some of the key plays today, and then it'll just come back to the pack a little bit in reality. Cujo's here. Hope your Tuesday's going well too, buddy. Good to see you. A couple people in the door so far. Tried to get the show on the schedule a little bit earlier, a little bit more convenient for everybody. Obviously, no conflict with the Awesome Boys today, I don't think. I think they're going live in like an hour. So we'll be done by then. Just 4 games to talk about today. Kind of straightforward in most spots. We've got one big piece of news that we're waiting on, which is Andrew Wiggins, who I had in very, very briefly. I had out all morning. Then very briefly, somewhere around, I think, 2 o'clock, 2:30, I decided to put him in because I just kept on seeing a bunch of prop stuff about him. And then at 3:15, I decided to take him back out. So he was only in there for about a half hour. But if you've got that version of the projections, he's not currently in there right now. He's dealing with a back issue, apparently. So currently questionable. Definitely a piece to keep an eye on. As far as other injury news, we've got Jamal Murray was listed as probable, but all signs point toward playing. Brendan Podziemski also already confirmed is playing. Then we've got some outs. Bojan Bogdanovic, Day'Ron Sharpe, Ben Simmons, Trendon Watford's some missing pieces still for Brooklyn. Trey Murphy III, DeJounte Murray, and then some key ones, Steph Curry and Anthony Melton from that Golden State team. So Golden State, I was talking about it a little bit in the Discord earlier. And, to me, oops, forgot to update that timestamp before. To me, I've still got Golden State just kind of projected like they've been running, where I've got everybody basically maxed out, even shorthanded. I've got them kind of maxing out around 30 with a just distribution of minutes. It's created some key situations, and you'll see one of the guys at the top of the board, Mo Moody. I've got him at 26 minutes. I was going to cut him. I was going to give him like 24, 25. I'm still wrestling with that. I don't really know for sure. It's pretty murky as far as that goes. There's more safety with the Podziemskis and Buddy Hields and so on of the world, the Kumingas of the world, the guys that I've got in the 28 to 30 minute range. But Mo Moody checks in at 3,600 on DraftKings. We're significantly above the field, but in the projections that this ran against, he's also the highest projected owned guy. We're 2.5 times the field, essentially, with that massive 83% share on DraftKings. And he's a significant looking piece on FanDuel as well. 66% over there. He's capable of being a 0.88 per minute guy. In minimal time this season, he's seen a 24% usage rate and 0.94 fantasy points per minute on the FanDuel scale, 1.01 on the DraftKings scale. For all of last year, he was a 0.87 per minute player on FanDuel. And we'll talk about him again in a couple minutes. But I've got my concerns with the field running away with Mo Moody because, one, I don't know for sure that he plays full mid-20s, upper 20s minutes. He got a big chunk of the minutes that he's received in that 15 minutes a game. A big chunk of that game, he played like a full fourth quarter in their, I want to say, second game. In just garbage time. They won that game by like 30 points. So we all know that he's a capable enough NBA player, but I don't know. I fully endorse the math and what we're looking at with the Sims. My question is the minutes. Nothing else about the play. If it comes out with 26 minutes, the player and this setup should look pretty spectacular on both sites. He is our top owned player on both sites in the top 150 in the Sims and looks pretty terrific. Vegas-wise, we've got the first game up is the Mavs and the T-Wolves. This slate locks at 7:30, by the way. I'm sure you guys know that. T-Wolves favored by 5 at home, 221 point total. Denver at Brooklyn. Nikola Jokic looks pretty tremendous. Difficult to reach on a somewhat top-heavy slate. but easy to see the advantage with him over Brooklyn. A couple just odds and ends from the Brooklyn side of that one. I think the big change there would be if Jamal Murray doesn't play, but it seems like he's all, like I said, all systems go. Sacramento at Utah. Sacramento favored by 6.5 on the road. We're seeing a bunch of Domantas Sabonis again. Some pieces there. Utah is another rotation a little bit in flux. I've kind of got to lean toward John Collins with the minutes that are freed up with what's-his-face's devastating injury. Weird injury if you saw it too. His leg, he missed with his left leg and then came down on the right and just shattered his right leg, dislocated his ankle. It was not pretty. But definitely some openings for minutes and opportunity in that Utah rotation. 234 point total in that one too is the biggest total on the slate. So a lot of pieces in that one. And then the nightcap is the Pellies against that Golden State team. It's just a 2-point spread, but it's a 217.5 point total. So two of these games under 220 points, one of them at 221, and then the other one vaults up to 234. So again, that Sacto and Utah game is kind of compelling for that reason. Did we get the confirmed out in the 4:30? Again, I have them out. There it is. Yep, 9 minutes ago. Perfect. Let me just drop that in there. Andrew Wiggins is confirmed out. So what we'll need to do around as we head into lock is just keep an eye with both Golden State and Utah on any kind of news that we might get about starters. All right, that should be updated on the site. That's how I had it projected, so we should be good to go there. So, yeah, it just is a matter of what does Mo Moody play up there. You can see where Sabonis lands, number 2 on both sites. 54% of them on FanDuel, 56% of them on DraftKings. Julius Randle looks like he's a big piece on both sites. It does spike on DraftKings with Moody up the only, massively owned piece. Not that half of the top 150 isn't a big chunk, but it really spikes up with him. And then it's a pretty solid plateau of double-digit ownership for a 4-game slate. That's concentrated ownership right there. And then we'll have some more limited guys down this way. It looks like a little bit more bouncing around on FanDuel, but it's going to come down to how they're priced and positioned. But I feel like it's a little bit less concentrated on FanDuel. It could just be a product of how it's sorted. But I think you get a better spread on the blue side today. Let's dive into some positions. Hit the like button as we get started. Check out rotoscouts.com. Get access to all the projections. I'll start getting, now that we're into the season a little bit, I'll start getting some of the sim results up there during the afternoons. I'll make that probably a separate column, separate article, rather than piling it into the one download. But what's better for you guys? Would you rather have the sim results in the one same file with the projections, or would we rather have it as a separate thing, like the boom bust tool kind of a thing over at the old place? Not exactly like that, obviously, but let me know. Whatever works better for you guys, really. I told Dennis that I would get some standard deviation numbers onto the projections. I'll get that done. I just want to make sure they're, where I want them to be. It's the exact formula I've been using, really, but I'm just tinkering with it, making sure that I've got it, especially at the bottom end, is a tough one. Power Fantasy Buddy at the 1 and Gary Payton in the 2, with Pods and Moody running the second team, although Moody at the 2 is logical. Kerr not logical, though. Yeah, I got no issues with that. I mean, the way I have it, again, oops. Forgot that we sorted a position already. I've just got everybody, again, 30 minutes and below. And as I was saying in the Discord, I really feel like, just given what they've been saying about wanting to run a 12-man rotation basically all season, and how literally in their 3 games, nobody's played more than 30 minutes. So I really feel like they've got to study in-house or something that says the best approach, rather than having guys sit out all the time and bang, 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 is to play guys around a 30-minute average. We'll see spikes, and on nights like this, you could definitely see spikes. There's no reason to think that Podziemski couldn't play 34 minutes, that Buddy couldn't play 34, 36 minutes. Kuminga could play 32, 34. Draymond could easily get over 30. But the way they've been playing it, and what it seems like their approach to this season is to keep everybody around this kind of an average. So it was easy to just kind of spread those minutes, even with the absence. The guy you mentioned that I don't have getting as much run is Gary Payton, and that could be a direct swap. There could be a direct 8-minute swap between Mo Moody and Gary Payton, depending on how that goes. You could also even it out a little bit more. So it's another reason I wanted to do the show early, to have a little bit of time to play with that as we go into lock. As it stands, Payton did not come up because he's super low projected. But if we get that piece of news, that is a direct pivot. 3,500 versus 3,600. Payton small forward, shooting guard for Mo Moody. On FanDuel, it's more of a direct pivot because you got shooting guard on both of them. 4,300, 4,400. So it's Gary Payton. At worst case, you can build with Mo Moody and then pivot to Gary Payton if it comes up that way. Odds are, honestly, that they both probably play like lower mid-20s minutes. But this is how I went with it for now. I've been moving pieces around with that team basically all day. So again, the way that Mo is in here right now, and it's not like he's a runaway freight train of a projection. I've got him at 22 and change fantasy points. 58% true shooting this year, 10.3% assists in the 3 games. But again, we're talking about a 15-minute average that was kind of spiked by one big stint. Otherwise, he's playing a few minutes here, a few minutes there. But again, he is an okay producer when he's been out there. 0.87 per minute last year. So far this year in the tiny sample, 0.94 per minute on the FanDuel scale, 1.01 on DraftKings. So we're massively ahead. On FanDuel, it's like double the field at 66%. And on DraftKings, it's like 3 times what was projected. Not 3 times, 2.5 times. This is still sorted, right? I think so. Yeah. Christian Brown comes up pretty significantly as well, 4,400. So 2 pieces of value right in a row at the top of the board at the guard position on DraftKings. 42% Brown. We're a little ahead of the field there. He's probably, I'd say, mid-30s, upper 30s in that ownership. 0.86 per minute on the DraftKings scale so far this year. Been a reasonable producer at that level of salary. He's played 34 minutes a game over the 3 games he's played. Got him at 32 right now and definitely showing some value over there. At 5,500 on FanDuel, he's barely coming up at all. 6.6%. We're below the field. Probably puts the field double, in the 12-15 kind of a range. 0.81 per minute on FanDuel last year. 0.91 per minute this year, but a low usage player. 15.7% usage. But definitely full shot at minutes. Potentially a little bit more to do for basically everybody. So I could see a little bit of just price-based upside on DraftKings. And if you wanted to press the gas a little bit more and get them even to 50-ish% and get a little bit further ahead of the field on a play like that, because it's just basically a value lever, I think it's fine. On the FanDuel side, again, just totally skippable. He's playable. It doesn't mean that he can't be played. But you can see the low value mark. Again, everybody knew FanDuel's over here. Projection, value, above or below the field, and by how much, depending on which direction the arrow's pointing, and then depending on how dark the shading is. 2 different values in there. And then top 150 ownership, same thing over here for DraftKings. And then just some stuff in the middle with stats and more stats over here. Dennis Schroeder, never my favorite play, but he's been coming up a ton early in the season. Just getting minutes, basically 34 a game, 33.8 a game, putting up a 0.99 per minute on FanDuel on 23% usage so far this season. Both of those marks higher than they were last year, 0.90 and 20% usage last year. So doing a little bit more out there. He's a 1.06 per minute player so far on the DraftKings scale. He's been decent. He's, again, never my favorite guy. I feel like I've lost so many times with Dennis Schroeder in lineups when he's looked great. But he has been producing this year. We're getting him 41% of the time on DraftKings, and we're getting him 56% of the time on FanDuel. So a massive piece on both sites. We're way above the field on him on FanDuel. Or we're well above the field, I should say. On DraftKings, we're level but ahead, it looks like. So figure the field is like high 30s there, and we're a couple of points ahead. Trey loves Cam Thomas and Zaire Williams. I think that's reasonable. Zaire's right here. He didn't really come up much because I don't have him all that highly projected. But he's very, very cheap. He's got 18 minutes on. 0.94 per minute right now in the season. If Will Hardy starts Cody Williams at the 4 over John Collins, he's tripping. I think it's going to be Collins. Collins was the guy who took the floor immediately after the injury. And it's just, he's the veteran guy who basically gets that spot. I really think that's the case. So I'd be surprised if it goes another way. But yeah, that would be the other guy that I would kind of be thinking might be it. So again, Williams didn't really land, but he has been producing in a per minute sense. It's just that he's only playing like 18 minutes a night. So you got to get the upside for minutes. If they're getting waxed, you could definitely see a few additional minutes, just depending on if they empty the bench or whatever. But he's at least a rotation piece on a short slate for very, very cheap. He's only $3,300 on DraftKings. We did get him a little bit over there. He's below the field at 3.3%. Call it, figure 5-6% for the field based on how that looks. Maybe a little bit more. I think you can get a little bit higher up on that. Power. I wouldn't have I wouldn't have called it out like that. But I guess so, if that's how you want to play it. That cracked me up. So yeah, after Hendricks died, Collins... Oh, actually, you know what? I read that wrong earlier. It was actually Cody Williams that came right out. Collins came out alongside him a couple minutes later. I still think it's Collins. But I'm glad I went back to look at that. I mean, Collins still ended up playing more. Cody didn't play at all in the fourth quarter. Collins played the important minutes in the fourth quarter, it looks like. What was the score final in that game? The relatively close game. Collins played the final third of the third quarter and the first 2/3 or so of the fourth quarter, but he didn't close out the final handful of minutes. What is this? He didn't close out the final 4 and change minutes. But they did throw in a couple garbage time minutes at the tail end to Filipowski and Sensabaugh. Sensabaugh is another guy who could get some additional run there. It's just kind of messy and ugly. But yeah, it was the Hendricks injury. That was it, Mamba. The one from last night. Taylor Hendricks. He fell down on his leg and broke it and dislocated his ankle. He's out for the season. So let's keep on rolling here. A couple other Golden State guys obviously hitting the board pretty hard. And again, these guys are just going to come up like crazy. So it is really just a matter of how the minutes are distributed. But Podziemski and Buddy Hield, I think, only go up from here. If anything, I feel like I'm a little bit light at 30 for Podziemski and 28 for Buddy. So you could definitely hit the gas a little bit more even than these. Basically, right now, we're coming up dead even with the field on both players. 20% Podziemski, 18% Buddy on FanDuel, 35.33% exactly of both players on DraftKings. And again, that's right around the field based on how those arrows are pointing and how those are shaded. I think if you want to take it a little bit north of the field on both of those guys, perfectly fine. Neither guy cracks the 5 value on FanDuel. They're 57 and 6,000, but they do have multi-position at both guard spots. They're at worst going to be good like mid-board pieces to just build in, move around to different positions as you need them. Definitely some scoring upside for both players. Buddy, as we know, pretty scoring dependent. Yeah, no sweat, Mom. I was basically getting mad about losing another showdown because of dumb shit. Yeah. On the injury note, even though I should be off Stephon because of how he treated my Bills, his ATL tear in a contract year sucks. Yeah. Yeah, I felt bad for Diggs. And for CJ Stroud. And for me, I had Stroud as a key piece of my plans in my Superflex League, and it is not working out. Fortunately, I drafted Sammy Darnold in like the last round. Saving my life. So, where's the rest of? I guess that's it at the guard spots for Golden State. So again, big opportunity for both of these players. In his limited action so far, Buddy Hield's been a monster. 1.48 FanDuel points, 1.59 DraftKings points per minute, but I think we know he's not going to continue doing that. 69.7% true shooting so far, a 24.3% assist rate so far. Is he shooting from 3? 52% from 3 on 8.3 takes a game. But as I was about to say before, somebody in the Discord said Buddy Hield's probably going to be chucking tonight, and I said I can pretty much guarantee you that he is. So definitely an upside ceiling kind of a day for him. Ant looking very solid as a pay-up kind of a guy. 44%, basically level with the field at 9,000 on FanDuel, both shooting guard and small forward eligible. Shooting guard only on DraftKings, but it doesn't really seem to matter. We still got him 27.3% of the time against the field. Basically dead even. So another guy that it's, again, with his ceiling as a true superstar, it is fine to grab a few additional shares or go the other way as an expensive piece that can be replicated in other ways. You could go below the field on that number. So again, no requirement to be dead even with the field. But sim-wise, he came up almost exactly where the field's got him. Malik Monk just looking like an is who he is kind of a spot. 58 on FanDuel, level with the field at 13%, 54 on DraftKings. We got him 23% of the time, but a little bit below the field. He's fine. 1.03 per minute on DraftKings so far this year. 102 on FanDuel. He was a 1.08 player on FanDuel last year. Deontay to the Ravens. Yeah, Deontay to the Ravens is a big pickup for them, though. Killed Mark Andrews is unlikely stock. I hated that tight end split anyway. It's been so annoying for fantasy. So, fine by me. I like both those players as individuals. I just wish they were on like different teams where they could both do well. A lot of weeks they're cannibalizing one another, or one guy gets it all and the other guy has nothing. It's annoying. But yeah, great pickup though for the Ravens. Kind of receiver they need. Mamba likes the pickup for the tight ends. Middle of the field will be wide open with Deontay on the field. Yeah, I could see that. I hadn't really thought about it, but doesn't take away outside of just another mouth to feed. But it could open up a little bit in this game. But again, for fantasy-wise, DFS-wise, I've just been annoyed with the split. Anyway, continuing on. So Monk, again, just kind of looks like who he is. I don't really see the major appeal, but he's highly playable. Just one of those situations where if you've got 5,400 and one of these spots open, you can plug him in. It's perfectly fine. Conley, pretty similar. 23% dead level with the field on DraftKings at 4,400. On FanDuel, he's still 4,900 over there against the higher cap. It's about the same price, really. 14% level with the field. Looks like maybe a couple few points below. This one is an outlier FanDuel. Dante DiVincenzo at 4,800 small forward shooting guard. Fair amount of upside there. So far this season, he's been a letdown. 0.70 per minute is a disaster. Last year for the full season, though, he was a 0.96 per minute player. We know that he's a hell of a three-point shooter once he gets going. For the season so far, a 45.3% true shooting percentage. He's making 28% of his 8.33 threes per game. I don't think that's going to be the situation all year. So unless you think that Dante DiVincenzo is truly going to shoot this poorly all season, I think he's a pretty interesting play at 4,800 given how much he came up against the field on FanDuel. Looks like a pretty solid outlier with a true ceiling. Even if you don't think he's going to play well all year, you got to at least give me that there's going to be nights where Dante's going to go out and hit 5 of those threes and get a nice little lever up for his point scoring and then potentially take it up from there. He does a little bit otherwise. Just 12.7 assists this season, 3.3% rebounding. I don't have steals and blocks on there. He's a good defensive player, gets his hands on the ball, so he can pad stats a little bit that way, but really we're looking for that three ball to go down a lot more than it has. Cam Thomas, and on DraftKings, by the way, Dante, it's not like we didn't get him over there. We just got him 30 percentage points less than we got him on FanDuel, 18% level with the field on DK, 4,800 point guard shooting guard over there versus small forward shooting guard. I feel like the positioning probably works better for him too on FanDuel, in addition to the actually the value score is 10.1 lower over on FanDuel. Cam Thomas, another player with true ceiling, 1.26 per minute so far on FanDuel this season, 1.32 on DraftKings. Last year, though, he was a 1.01 player, very scoring dependent. Don't love him. Kind of glad we're below the field on him on both sites. It's one of those players, though, that could absolutely burn you if you don't go to him. We definitely want some across a full 150 lineups. 15% works for me. I think that's fine. 15, 20-ish%. You're probably still below the field there on FanDuel. 13.3%. It looks like it's a bigger haircut on DraftKings. FanDuel, he's just a 4.78 value. On DraftKings at 7,700, he's a different story. 5.16 value score there. So the field is getting him more, but we actually got him a little bit less and significantly less by comparison to the field in our sim. I do think if it's a spot where you want to chase the scoring upside, you could take another few percentage points of him and stay below the field. But it looks like a pretty hard undercut on Cam Thomas on DraftKings today. Welcome to the great tight end debate of, what is this, week 9. Going to try and get ahead of football projections, put some time in on them tonight. That way we're not just behind all week and missing shows and stuff. So look for those. I don't know when they'll get posted on the site, but we'll have Thursday showdown game up in plenty of time. But just looking to get out ahead of things on a slower night. Just 4 games here, just a few hockey games, the 1 baseball game. Let's go Yankees. Time for the comeback. No team has ever that's wild to me. No team's ever even forced a game 6 when down 0-3 in a World Series. First time for everything. Kevin Huerter pulling a little bit of weight, 15% FanDuel, 12% DraftKings. Just kind of level with the field on FanDuel, a little bit below the field on DK. We did get solid chunks of Luka, 12% on DraftKings, 13% on FanDuel. Easy pay up option. Considering that those numbers are level with the field and we did get him there, I feel like that's a good spot where you could say, all right, I'm going to pay up, get a little bit more of an edge against the field with Luka. And I think you're perfectly fine there. Luka's letdown game on a 4-game slate is still a pretty monster raw score. So I think you're pretty okay. Red CYC Sports in the World Series, Red CYC. It's happened 24 times in the World Series. Teams have gotten out to a 3-0 lead, and their opponents have been put away without making Game 6 every single time. I think there were 6 Game 5s, and the rest in 18 sweeps. This was a stat that was broadcast on Fox yesterday that I'm conjuring in my memory. But yeah, I believe me, I haven't forgotten that Red Sox comeback. I was at that Game 7. I was at the one the year before, 3 for Boone's home run, and then I was at the 0-4 one for the Red Sox comeback. And it was all Dave Roberts, too, with that stolen base in Game, 4? Anyway, so yeah, Luka, if you want to pay up a little bit more and take a bigger chunk of Luka and take him out to 18%, 20-ish, I think you're okay. You're just buying a big opportunity there. So no issues with that, and level with the field at worst, 13, 15%. Darren Fox, we got a lot of them on FanDuel, but it looks like less than the field. It looks like a big piece on FanDuel, 32%. Happy to have him around there, but if we're looking at some of these other options, I do feel like the undercut is kind of justified. Especially if we're going to push additional shares, and he's point guard only. So any of these guys that you're pushing through that position probably bited his ownership a little bit. We only got him 10% of the time on DraftKings. He's a higher relative price at 85 on their pay scale. Puts him under a 5 value score. He's under a 5 value score over here, but a better fit apparently. Just 10% of them, but again, below the field, more significantly below the field on the DraftKings slate. Jordan Clarkson, just around his usual opportunity. Looks like who he is. 4% on FanDuel, 7% on DraftKings, at or below the field. CJ McCollum, no real love. Single digits on both sites. We're getting down into the thin part on DraftKings here, just single digit guys. Still looking for the outliers. A little bit of Jamal, assuming he plays. He's probable trending toward, gonna play. We got him less than the field, it looks like, but 12% is reasonable. It's a little bit of a chunk. Only 3% of them on DraftKings. Point guard and shooting guard over there. He's point guard only on FanDuel. Surprised the dual position eligibility didn't help him out a little bit there. So far this season, just 0.92 per minute on DraftKings, 0.92 per minute on FanDuel as well. But last year on the FanDuel scale, he's a 1.22 player. I know there's a lot of what's wrong with Jamal going around right now, but I think we'll be okay. Otherwise, on FanDuel, just Keontae George, Colin Sexton, a couple of outliers. 14.6% of Keontae George, basically level with the field. Looks like he's a non-factor on DraftKings at a $300 higher price against the lower relative cap. Just 2% of them below the field. And then Colin Sexton, same group, 35.3% above the field. Not massively above the field, but above the field by a little bit on FanDuel. Just 1.3% well below the field, but this is probably still single-digit ownership at $6,400 on DraftKings. That's a massive price difference. 57 against the higher FanDuel cap. Point guard, shooting guard versus 64 on DraftKings. That's a big difference. Everybody else, we got 7% of Kyrie. If you wanted to grab a few additional shares of Kyrie, I got no issue with it. 1.14 this season on FanDuel, 1.13 on DraftKings, with upside for more. I've got him at 35 minutes. He's been playing 34 a night over the first 3, but I think there's realistic potential there. Good defensive team that they're colliding with, though. Not going to do any favors for Dallas playing against that Minnesota team. Power with a hot take. Jordan Hawkins outscores Podziemski tonight. That is a hot take. Where was Hawkins? I just saw him. There he is. 29 minutes for Hawkins. He came up 1.3% of the time on FanDuel. 2.67% of the time on DraftKings. Not monster numbers, but there's believable minutes there. So far this season, he's been a 0.90 per minute player. Last year, just a 0.73 per minute player on basically the same usage, though. Actually, a little bit more usage. 71% true shooting so far. A little bit of an outlier there. If you believe that he's going to hold up, he's shooting 52.9% from 3 so far on 5.7 takes per game. That's where your outlier is coming from. I don't think he's going to shoot 52.9% from 3 all season, but, maybe you get high 30s out of him. Don't have his number offhand from last year. But I'm going to lean Pods. But it wouldn't knock me out of my chair. Hawkins has another decent game. Last time out was 27.9 FanDuel points in 34.2 minutes. At 5,100, it's like a standard deviation on top. That's like 1. It's really, I don't know that that's necessarily getting you there. Clay just gave you last time out under a fantasy point per minute, 24.8 in 27 minutes. Not that that's necessarily predictive at all. Overall, this season has been 1.05 per minute. Brandon Ingram's been a 1.27 per minute player. We didn't really get much of him on either site. He's on the board for sure. Typical opportunity. Nothing changes for Brandon Ingram here. If he's going to check in at super low ownership, and it looks like he's higher owned than our low single digits here, I do think you could grab a couple just it's a short slate kind of shares of Ingram. But it doesn't look like there's much cause to really press up for him at those positions at those prices. Otherwise, nobody of real significance down the bottom here. Russ is, for me, just a DNP. I'm glad he came up 0% of the time on both sites. He's been fine, but yeah, not a Russ guy. Let's jump over to the forwards. So a couple of big pieces off the top on the DraftKings slate, with 47% ownership going to Julius Randle, who's only 7,600 over there. He's power forward and center eligible, which is pretty clutch. Julius is also probably not coming away with a 72% true shooting percentage for the season, but he's a very good player, and I will continue every time I ever talk about Julius Randle to point out that he is an underappreciated facilitator. In the small sample so far this year, 22.4% assist rate. He's a decent enough rebounder. He's got a lot of upside for the price. 1.15 DK points per minute so far this year, 1.06 on the FanDuel scale. But last year was a 1.17 per minute FanDuel player. That was in a half a season with the Knicks. And we've seen him in the 1-2 and change range. So while he's under 8,000, I think he's kind of a priority play. I think Julius Randle's really interesting. Got a lot of them on FanDuel as well. We're above the field on both sites. We're not a straight line up, but we're a nice upward angle there with some greenish kind of shading. So we're well above the field at 33% on FanDuel. Like it a lot. Again, Christian Brown really didn't land on FanDuel because he's $1,100 more expensive over there against the FanDuel cap than he is at $4,400. Shooting guard and small forward eligible on DK. Got him 42% of the time and a little bit above the field. Plenty of upside in 32 minutes. I mean, just to be out there. 0.86 per minute. That's fine. You'll get a few upside games just based on the math of the situation. But he's not the highest usage guy. He could stand to rebound or facilitate a little bit more to pad his stats. He's only 4,400, so you really don't have to sweat it, but that's why he doesn't have an impact on FanDuel, because he's really not doing anything. Buddy, 18% on FanDuel. MPJ, 14.6%, both basically level with the field, just under a 5 value score. Bigger pieces on DraftKings. 5.4 value scores for both those guys. We talked about Buddy a little bit before, but MPJ is coming up basically the same. 32% versus 35%. They conflict at the small forward spot, but you can move them around, obviously, with diverse positioning. Power forward eligibility on MPJ. 32% of them on the DraftKings slate. He's been a 0.81 per minute player on DK, 0.80 on FanDuel. That's down by 0.14 per minute over last season. I don't think that's going to continue. So far this season, just a 42.3% true shooting percentage. There's your problem. Making just 20% of his 6 and change three-pointers. I can pretty much promise you that that's going to go up. Not necessarily starting today, but they're going to light this Brooklyn team up. So, no reason to think it couldn't start today. I honestly would be fine taking a few additional shares of MPJ. Especially FanDuel, where it's another spot where, like, since we got level with the field or maybe a couple small percentage points above, to me that suggests there's additional room there. And if the field's going to be on a 4-game slate, anybody that the field's going to be 13, 15% on that looks good with believable ceiling, I think may be worth pressing up for a few additional shares just because of the short slate of it. Kuminga mix and match piece on FanDuel, 7% level with the field, maybe a little bit under, but another big piece on DraftKings, 5,900 over there, both forward spots. Cheaper against the lower cap, 30% of them level with the field, significant upside. I've got him at 30 minutes, but again, like I said before when I was talking about this team, nobody has said Mama thinks Brooklyn's going to win this game. That's bold. Like I was saying before, nobody for Golden State in the first games of the season has played more than 30 minutes. I think that's what they're trying to do with the season. But I put Kuminga there, and I do think he's got believable run into the 30s. Him, their usual, him, Draymond, Podziemski, the usual upside guys, all probably do have realistic run like that tonight if they need them. But it's really going to be a matter of how much they press the gas on which guys, or do they just continue trying to play like 12 guys and just rotate in some of the back end? Maybe not a win, but look at him backpedaling already. Let's see. Where's the what was the line? I tell you, I mean, just 4.5. It's closer than you'd think. So I guess a little bit less bold maybe than I was saying. I feel like that ought to be bigger. Has it moved? Let me see. I know Denver scuffled a little bit, but come on. It's up to 5. 219 still. Probably pick up another half a point by game time. But yeah, you would think just in kind of a vacuum, you would think that would have been a bigger line. I didn't really think about it. Highest scorer of fantasy points or highest scorer of real life points? Get over into the other sheet here. Brooklyn. I mean, I've got Cam separated by a pretty solid 7-ish points of fantasy points. So I think that's just kind of going to be the easy answer. That he's going to score more real life points and fantasy points. So either way. I know I asked you for clarification. Yeah, I've got him separated by 7 and change fantasy points on DK with favoring Cam. The other Cam is right there. Cam Johnson. What's Thomas's DK positioning? He does have forward. Where is he? Oh, there he is. Right under Cam Johnson. So yeah, we talked about him before when we were breaking down the guards, but we didn't talk about Cam Johnson right next to him. At 5,200, we actually got a pretty significant amount more of Cam Johnson. 22% of him versus 13% of Cam Thomas for a higher price. But the projection's right there. And I know you asked about Schroeder, but take 7 and change off of that, and that's the projection I have for Schroeder. But they're a similar buy as far as the point per dollar value goes. We've got a few more minutes going in Cam Thomas's direction. He's playing about 2.5 more minutes on average than Johnson is. I've got it a little bit more separated than that today. But there's a little bit of upside there. And Thomas, again, I just think you're dealing with a little bit of scoring dependence. But if he goes out there and has one of those lighted up heat check scoring kind of nights, you could get there. Just not my favorite type guy. I think there's a lot of ways to work around him. 15% on FanDuel. You got to him less than the field there. We got more Cam Johnson on FanDuel as well. 22% basically level with the field. Johnson's a 0.89 per minute guy last year on FanDuel. Just 0.76 so far this year. Down a little bit in usage, down at 17.8% so far. I would consider Johnson more of like a mix and match piece than a priority on either side at this kind of ownership. On a larger slate, I think he would have gotten chewed up by a lot of other guys. Where were we up top? Keegan Murray, 12% FanDuel, 27%, but below the field on the DraftKings slate. Just another guy, looks like who he is. Basically, everybody on Sacramento just kind of is who he is, kind of a spot. You can definitely have some, but he's been underperforming his rates from last year so far. 0.76 per minute on the FanDuel scale, 0.86 last year, 0.77 on the DK scale. And the usage is down basically 2 points. 17.8% usage last year, 15.6 so far this year in a small sample. A guy that I do like, Aaron Gordon. Another player who is a big man who not quite to the degree of Randall, but another player who, as a big man, is kind of an underrated facilitator. He's a good rebounder. He's a good scorer, good athlete. I like Aaron Gordon a lot, and when he pops, I like getting to him because it seems to me, for some reason, people don't love going to this player. Put up a solid 45-2 in 42.1 last night in the OT game. Definitely think there's upside for that or more. So far this season, 0.85 per minute. Last year, 0.94 per minute. That's, again, FanDuel scale, but it's 0.86 on DraftKings so far this year. He's just one of those guys who can be a double-digit contributor in all the different rates across the board, and he can give you a lot if you catch him on the right day. He's not expensive, 61 on FanDuel, 5+ in the value rating. Same thing on DraftKings at 61, power forward only. I like the spot for Gordon. And again, just upside against that Brooklyn team. I feel like we're a little bit light in that Vegas line. I really do. Ben, talking about Aaron Gordon right now, actually. Howdy. Good to see you, buddy. He looks like we're sorted to the forward spot right now based on DraftKings positioning. So I can give you a more clear answer to that, but he's going to be one of them. Sorting by those point per dollar scores, Gordon looks like number 3 at 6,100. And we got him again level with the field around 35%. Sabonis we got above the field at 55%. He's got a little bit bigger of a value score. He also has multi-position eligibility, which is great because that means you can play him alongside Jokic. You could play like him and Randall alongside Jokic. And then Trace Jackson-Davis, who we haven't gotten to yet because he's a center only on DraftKings. On DraftKings, we only got him 3% of the time because he's 5,000 over there. 5,000 plays a little bit differently on FanDuel. In his 24 minutes, got him 32% of the time. He's showing a pretty decent value score on that site. He's a low-usage player, 14% usage. But he's a guy who does a little bit of everything out there. Should see an opportunity to pick up some minutes. He's only averaged 8.7 minutes so far this season. Oh, so I'm sorry, that was the wrong column. 19.2 minutes. I thought that was a little bit low. He's averaged 19 minutes so far this season. I gave him an additional few for tonight. 8.7 was his fantasy output in 16 minutes the other night. So beware, you can get a clunker game like that from him. But yeah, to answer your question, Aaron Gordon was number 3 by the points per dollar value there. Got him at I have him essentially at exactly last year's rate. And last year's rate, just to put another button on the Aaron Gordon upside, was actually down from 1.05 previous year. Different situation, but there's appreciable any given slate upside on a player like him. So again, and I just like those sneaky multi-category guys who can contribute in a number of different ways out there. Let's see. Malik Monk, kind of like Keegan Murray, just looks like who he is. Basically everybody on Sacto. I think we got a little bit ahead of the field on Fox, and we were well ahead of the field on Sabonis. And then everybody else is just coming up as a look like who you are kind of a play. Doesn't take them off the board by any means. Again, we got 27% of Keegan Murray on DraftKings. That's just a little bit below the field. We got a little bit below the field on Malik Monk as well, 23.3% though. That's still a significant chunk. If you're building 150 lineups, that's a lot of your lineups. But it is a little bit below the field just because it's no advantage to Malik Monk today. He's just Malik Monk. Lowry Markkanen also looks like that. Different team, obviously. 25.2% usage so far this season. That's a little bit of an uptick, about a point more usage so far in the small sample, 3 games. But he hasn't done much with it. He's turned 1.17 last year on less usage into 1.07 per minute this year on more usage. 114 on the DraftKings scale is a more significant number, but obviously that would be higher last year as well. Definitely playable. Any given slate upside for a guy like that. Definitely the idea that he could be asked to do a little bit more. 29.8 FanDuel points in 35 minutes the other night. You do get a lot of that kind of game out of Lowry, but he does have an upside. Ben's first time here. Glad you found us, buddy. Basically every day. Not always at the exact same time. The time does bounce around a little bit. I'm also realizing we're coming up on 5:30, so I'm sure we'll lose a couple folks to the guys over at Awesemo, but that's fine. Yeah, Ben, you can reliably count on it being every weekday. And the site is rotoscouts.com. For those unfamiliar out there, looks like we got a couple new folks in here. So rotoscouts.com, every single sport, access to everything we got. Basketball, football, baseball for hopefully more than one more game, hockey, all 4 major sports going on right now. All in, access to all 4 of them, under $1 a day. Your only decision point is, do you want to pay weekly, monthly, or quarterly? There's a little bit of a discount as you go up that scale, but it's under $1 a day to get access to all of the projections. For football, there's a ton of different data. I do rankings. I do a gigantic 20,000 word game notes column and talk about everybody. But yeah, the show does go every single day during the week. And then big marathon football show. We do shows for showdown slates. The percentages that we're running against this comes from acemind.io. There are sim partners. I also encourage you to check those guys out. If you go over to AceMind, promo code ROTOSCOUTS, all in caps, gets you 20% off your first month over there. They've got an optimizer. They've got great sim tools. Football, basketball, the works. Since it's your first time here too, hit the like button if you get a chance and hit the subscribe bell. Trying to get up to 1,000 subscribers by the holidays helps us out so we can start doing like super chats and fun stuff like that. So tell your friends, spread the word. Appreciate you joining though. Appreciate all you guys out there, everybody who's here today watching this. Most particularly everybody who's subscribed, and those subscriptions keep on rolling in. I love seeing it. I'm trying my absolute best to provide a great product for you guys and provide the most affordable thing in the industry with a lot of value packed into it. So hopefully we're getting that across. But every single one of you guys who's subscribed so far, I said this the other day, you're my favorite person right now. And I see every single one of them come in because I'm checking it like a maniac. But you guys absolutely rock. Continuing on down the line, we got to pick up the pace a little bit. Not really, not like we're up against the deadline, but I was trying to do this in like an hour. That's the other thing, Ben. First time here, we tend to go a little long on our shows here. It's either I like the sound of my own voice or I just got a lot to say. Who knows? But we do dig into like everything. If you weren't here for, obviously you weren't, but for baseball, like that's my real go-to sport. We just dig into like crazy. We do multi-hour shows for every baseball slate basically. So stick around. Hopefully you like what you see. A little bit of thinning out as we get down here on the DK board. We got some DeMar DeRozan, 11% of him. He's below the field. Kevin Huerter, another is who he is kind of spot for both those guys. Didn't really get that much more DeRozan on FanDuel, and it looks like we're well below the field, just 16% of him. That's still a piece, but looks like we undercut the field pretty dramatically. He's 81 on FanDuel. Not a player I'm ever enamored with. He's perfectly fine. You can spike upside games, but he needs to make those mid-range jumpers that he loves. So he's fine, but not really for the money in the way that he bounces off this slate. Jaden McDaniels looking like a medium-strength priority on FanDuel. 29 minutes, got him right around 20 fantasy points. He's a .64 per minute player this year, .67 last year on FanDuel, .61 on DraftKings. Got to him less on the DK slate, just 8% of them over there, and that's below the field, but around. Slow-mo, minor piece, 7% on DK around the field, 13% FanDuel around the field. I think we've all been burnt enough times by slow-mo. So far this year, 1.21 fantasy points per minute on 11.2% usage. He's a super low usage player. This will come crashing back down to somewhere around this 0.89 kind of a number. needs to get a big boost of minutes. If you see a day where he drops into 32 minutes, that's when you can go to him at 41. Just right now, it looks like he's a okay value guy on a 4-gamer. Draymond could see a little upside. We got him 17 on FanDuel, 5 on DraftKings, at or below the field on both. Nas is interesting. I actually got Nas in some of the top lineups when I ran the sim before, just because of the way he bounces off like the top end of standard deviation. We got him 10% on FanDuel where he's center power forward. He's multi-position on both, actually. Sub 5 in the value scores on both sites. Just 5% and below the field on DraftKings. But he is a bouncy player. He is a guy with a little bit of believable upside to him, a little bit of believable ceiling. So FanDuel mostly, where we're like level-ish with the field, if you need the value spot and you're struggling with him not really pulling a ton of ownership, I don't mind grabbing a couple shares extra of Nas there. Just if you're like, man, I wish I had 55 for Cam Johnson at a power forward, but I can't figure out how to get him there. Just slip down to the 53 and put Nas in that spot. There's probably a bigger ceiling on Nas, even though the projection is slightly lower, even though we got more Cam Johnson. Anybody else? Who's that? Herb Jones. Herb Jones, come on down. Wow, big difference. 4,900 FanDuel, both forward spots. 5,400 DraftKings, both forward spots. Didn't get a single share of them on DraftKings and kind of happy about it. That's a terrible price. At 49 on FanDuel, we got a lot of them. He's in a quarter of all lineups over there and above the field. So far this year, 0.57 per minute on 12% usage. That usage is down 2 percentage points. Last year, though, it was on just 14%. He was a 0.81 per minute player. So a little bit better. There is enough upside at the cheap price. That's more just a functionally free square and a lever up to get to some of the bigger pieces that will make up the gap in his low end output. But a believable 20 and change points. Nobody else really came up that much. I'm actually surprised not to see PJ. I think this is the first time PJ's been on a slate where I didn't really get him. He's been putting up 0.88. That's basically exactly who he is. That's on lower usage, though. If he spiked back a few extra points of usage, you could see an upside day in any given slate. Like this one, for example, 43.2 FanDuel points in 33.2 minutes. There's definitely ceiling there. They're cutting PJ too much. I hate the matchup. I did give him a pretty significant haircut in the rate. And by I mean, the model. You could give him a slight amount more if you wanted to give PJ another 2 points. I don't really think it's a problem. Let me see what that would do. I don't mind that, actually. If you gave him 2 full fantasy points more, it takes him up to a little bit more of a reasonable haircut from his rate. It's like a 0.1 haircut. I gave him more than that. I think I'm going to leave him, though, because I really, really don't like that spot for him. But he is one player, again, I did expect to see a little bit more of. So keep an eye on him as we crash toward Lockett. As I wrestle with it, maybe I give him a little bit more of his usual output back. WW Fresh is here. He has Healed, Moody, and Slow-Mo. I like 2 of those guys. And Slow-Mo's fine. I just am not a big fan. There's a couple players like that I'm just not a big fan of. But I'll always take him. Like I said, though, typically with him, I'm looking for that game where I'm giving him more minutes than this. Right now, it just looks like an is who he is kind of a spot, but he is part of that Golden State team that could pick up easily more minutes. And if they look in his direction for a vet instead of some of these other guys, it could easily fall in his direction to get 26, 28 minutes. So definitely not ruling out anybody downstream from Golden State. Tried my best to give them kind of flat, where it's still steering you in the direction of the guys I think are the correct ones. minutes-wise, but trying to give everybody a little bit so that, yeah, exactly like you're saying, he's dirt cheap. And even if he comes out, again, if he comes out and plays just the 21 and has just a low-end median game, we still got him 7%. He's not off the board even for that. So if you gave him an additional 5 minutes, he would look great. So it just comes down to what kind of time you're giving him. And you might see him if you flipped over to a different show right now. You might see him out near the top of their board because they gave him the 26 minutes. I have no idea what they're doing. Not really. Kid Catastrophe. That's just that's an outlier total set apart from all the other teams. Early in the season, I'm not really going to sweat it. A couple of these teams are on a back-to-back too. And yeah, it's small slate. So again, WW Fresh, not talking you out of it by any means. And with players like that on small slates where there is one just appreciable upside, Slow-mo can have his days at those prices. There's nothing wrong with just normal him at those prices. It's just when I typically look for him, what I was saying is when he looks like he's become an asset for that day. Today, it looks like he's just who he is. But again, if I changed it where I gave him the additional 5 minutes, he would very much look like that asset today. So the fact that he's only coming up, this 13 is like level with the field. This 7 is like level with the field. So that does make him a spot on which you can gain a big chunk of advantage against the field's ownership. And then you're just riding that possibility of him getting the 26 minutes. If you get any kind of inkling or if you're personal friends with the coach and you got a phone call or a text message from him, for one, share it with us. What player over 10K is good for tonight? Just jump back. Which side are you on, Chris? I only played a couple lineups in NFL this week. WW. I took kind of a breather week, so I only played a few. Cashed a few, missed a few. It was like a break-even kind of a week, but it was literally only a few bucks worth of lineups. Projected the whole thing out. Spent, I'm going to say, 20 hours on it between Friday and Sunday to only play a couple bucks worth of lineups. Jokic is an easy answer to that. Sure, WW. So if you just want to go salary-wise, yeah, Jokic is easily the answer to that. 40% of them and above the field on DraftKings versus Luka, who's 11-5 and the only other player over 10K. We got 12% of Luka. It's not nothing. Happy to have more. I mentioned it before. That's another spot. It's kind of a completely different end of the spectrum than what I was just saying about Kyle Anderson. But knowing that the 12 is basically a little bit above or level with the field where they're projected. Same thing with the 13 over here. For a player like Luka, you want to take a couple of extra shares and build yourself a little position around Luka. I think that's perfectly fine. It's just you're deciding to throw that monkey wrench into the game theory of it, right? That's a decision point rather than one that the sim or the math is necessarily suggesting that you do. But it is right there staring in the face that Luka is significantly offset by ownership. So it's an angle you could take on the slate. But between the two, as far as the math goes, as far as, he's much higher projected in the raw projection for one thing with Jokic. I'm getting him significantly above the field on FanDuel at 44%. I've got him at 40% on DraftKings. Very happy to have it. I think he's borderline unstoppable against Brooklyn tonight. Chris is going with Luka. Again, no issues with it. We got plenty of them and happy to have more of them. Sabonis is the next man up, but he's already under 10K, so you've really only got the two guys over 10K to worry about. So that was a short, easy head-to-head. Let's clean up the bottom of the forward board. And then we'll jump to the centers. Any outliers? We did we do Herb Jones? I think I mentioned Herb Jones. Yeah. We talked about him. 0.57 so far this year on just 12% usage, down from significantly higher output at 0.81 on just 14.1% usage. True shooting percentage is 48.1 so far this year. He's made 11% of his 3 threes a game. Hasn't really had a lot of output. 19.9 FanDuel points in 31-2 the other day. We don't exactly have him projected much beyond that. But even with a light projection, he's coming up pretty significantly on FanDuel at 25% and ahead of the field. That's kind of where I expected to find PJ, was around that kind of a number. So maybe he's just taking those spots away from PJ for a little bit less. Basically the same kind of a projection, same kind of an upside. On DraftKings, neither one of those guys matters at all. And that's about it at the forward spot. So let's jump to center. Wrap this bad boy up. I got the Ace Mind Sims. Yeah, they're still open. So I'll show you guys a couple of those lineups, just what the constructions look like. So again, Jokic, top of the board, 40%. I'm sorry, I got to resort. Third highest in the top 150 on DraftKings. Second highest center eligible player, but the highest center only on FanDuel. And this isn't sorting for reasons. So everybody else on FanDuel, just real quick, Jokic's 44% is obviously all in the center spot. And then among the other center eligible guys, we got Rudy, 5% of him, odds and ends of these guys, and then 4% of Walker Kessler. So that's 71% of the FanDuel shares are going to center only guys, with Jokic taking 44.6% of that, and everybody else 15% or below. And really only Gobert drawing anything, 15%. But we are getting 29-ish% of center shares going to some of these power forward and center eligible guys. Sabonis is probably the most significant among those guys. Randall doesn't have center on FanDuel, so it's not him. A little bit probably of Draymond, a little bit of Nas, maybe a little bit of John Collins. Collins we haven't talked about yet outside of just referring to him as potentially getting some of those minutes. I've got him at 24. I feel like that's just kind of playing it safe. I think there's 28-ish upside there. But I think this is reasonable for now until we have a starting lineup there. Got him 3.3%, but believable for more. That's below the field. If you want to just based on the idea that he's probably going to jump into the starting lineup, I have no issues with taking that up to around the field, which is probably 10, 12%. Got a lot more of them on FanDuel at 21, right around the field. Up at the top on DK, Julius Randle, again, we've talked about him already, but a very, very significant piece today, 47.3. Feel like you're probably going to see a lot of Randle paired with Jokic, and certainly a lot of him paired with Sabonis, who's the top-owned player, center-eligible player on DraftKings, 56.6%. An interesting question when we pull up Ace Mine will be how many Sabonis plus Jokic lineups did we land on? It's probably a few. Everybody else, Kessler, 15% and below the field on him, 5,700. So 1.23 per minute this year on DraftKings, 1.33. He's a better FanDuel player just based on how he gets his fantasy points, but really didn't come up over there, 4% of them at the center-only spot. We get 8.6% of Rudy on DraftKings, and again, another guy significantly undercut to the field, 14% and level with the field on FanDuel. So that tells me we're probably, given this, we probably are seeing some of those Randall shares drop into the center spot too on DraftKings because everybody else is super light. Draymond, 17%, level probably slightly below the field on FanDuel. Nas, again, 10% with a believable ceiling in a per minute sense. Collins is the big piece there. Trace Jackson Davis, I mentioned before when we were doing forwards. He's center only on DraftKings. We got him, but not significantly, 3.3% of the time. Where I think you maybe run into concern is make sure that you're grouping off guys like TJD, Looney, Draymond. You probably don't want all three of those guys in a single lineup. Not even sure if you want two of them in a single lineup. Between the group, I've only got Looney at 18 minutes. 2.67% exposure DK. He's put up a monster 1.56 in his limited action. Did play 20.1 minutes the other night and put up 35.7 FanDuel points. It's a major upside there. I'm assuming there were some stocks involved in that. Claxton just 5% below the field on FanDuel, just 2% below the field on DraftKings, and nobody else significant. 1% of Danny Gafford. Zion didn't come up at all on either site. Does that mean that Zion's unplayable today? Absolutely not. Zion does have his lane at 8,900 though at power forward on FanDuel. He's just getting completely chewed up by either the bigger stars or the value guys. There's really not a ton of room for him. Curious what his public ownership is, though. I would say, considering the semi-star caliber impact that he could potentially have on any given slate, he's pulling just like 15-ish% ownership. It's not a completely awful spot to grab a few shares, but even grabbing a few shares, I don't know that I want to push it out to like 15%. So we'd still be below the field, which means doing it doesn't necessarily really pay off. On DraftKings, it's either a on or off, basically, I guess is what I'm saying there. Like a binary, either I want to be with the field on Zion or just not have him. The undercut doesn't really look like it would pay off. And he's around the same ownership on DraftKings. So again, your mileage may vary as far as what you get out of sim results. If you give him a couple points. Like, for example, I ran a sim earlier with Mo Moody and got him 100% of the time. And I took one fantasy point away from him, and he dipped down to like 81%. So one fantasy point, as the way these guys bounce off of sims and the impact of the standard deviation and everything, could have a very significant impact on the way these guys come through the numbers. If you gave Zion 40 DK points today, I would have no issue thinking that he would come up around 15% of the time. So it just depends on where you're looking. But definitely not a player I'm enamored with. We've actually got him slightly ahead of his output average so far on the season. Somebody's driving by with some rockin' Spanish music. Been a 1.30 player per minute so far this year on 30.9% usage, which again is significant. I've got him at 1.31 FanDuel, right in that range. And again, just didn't hit. It's price and positioning. And just the way it impacts with all of these guys and the desire to get to those higher priced, better plays. Let me pull up some Ace Mind, take a quick look at what the lineups look like, and then we'll punch out, we'll chase the news, get everything updated on the site. So again, if you're new here, these results are from and lineups constructed via acemind.io via their excellent sim tools. I definitely encourage everybody to check them out. These are just what some of the builds look like that fed those results that we were getting. So ignore those totals. This is sorted to 20. Top 150. So massive shares of these guys. Mike Conley sneaking into the top lineup. How about that? So we do have Randall Jokic off the top in that one. Actually, that one is Randall, Jokic, and Sabonis. So remember when I said you're going to have some combinations of the two, and then I was curious about how much Jokic and Sabonis we'd get together? I wasn't thinking we'd get one with all three. That's not an uninteresting lineup. You also get Kuminga, Jalen Wilson, Christian Brown, who's a perfectly reasonable value play. Mike Conley. I don't love Mike Conley, but that's okay if this... Does that spend all our money? It's bringing back $290 on average. Significant outlier lineup. Look at that. Leaves 100 on the table if you need to upgrade Conley somehow. I'm not sure if there is an upgrade there. But that's out of the gate. That's an interesting lineup. Good amount of Luka in here. Let's see, we get Luka and Joker lineups. That might be the edges of pay up. There's probably some in here. But I think it would probably be wiser to spread instead of going double pay up Luka Jokic. Spread that out and get to this Randall, Jokic, and Sabonis construction. And I'm sure if you alternate out like a Kuminga, cut a little bit of salary there, there's probably other ways to spread across those other positions. Sensabaugh sneaking into one here again. He's another guy who could pick up a couple additional minutes with that hole in that front court now. A lot of commonality among the key value guys up in those top lineups, and then a little bit of bounce among the various stars. Saw an Anthony Edwards in here. Yeah, this one's a different construction though. This one centers on Sabonis. Edwards over here, Darren Fox over there. But basically similar as far as the value plays go in that it's got Moody, it's got Kuminga, it's got Christian Brown in it. But it gives you the access to MPJ. It's a little bit maybe more balanced where this top one is like superstarsy scrubsy. Luka, Edwards, Wilson, Cam Johnson, DFS. I don't love that pairing. It's a reasonable lineup, though. It's got Luka and Domantas Sabonis in it. So it does look like 3 stars are like one of the $11K plus guys and 2 $9,000 guys or 80s, high 8s is pretty reasonable on the DraftKings Slater. Some Devo at the point. I like that. Again, that's another guy. We talked about him already, but don't sleep on the Dante DiVincenzo. He has been shooting so poorly, but he's still taking his 8+ a game. There are going to be days where 6 of those fall. Some Jackson Davis in here. I think he's a bigger piece on FanDuel, if I'm remembering what I said correctly. But just some of the spread. So you can get some inspiration, take direct lineups, whatever you want to do. I am not encouraging you to copy these lineups. I am not saying these are clear winners. This is the result of one sim run on AceMine, but it did run 31,000 entry pool. It ran it 30,000 times, 30,000 iterations per sim, and it ran 5 sims. So 150,000 versions of this slate. That top lineup was your best performer. Nope, not that top lineup. Sorry. That top lineup. Let's jump over to FanDuel. Take a quick peek. A lot of Sabonis. Moody. TJD. Yeah, bigger play on FanDuel. So a lot of Jokic through the top few. A lot of Jokic, Sabonis. But we do get, surprisingly, in some of these top lineups, you do get a Kessler up there. You get a Jackson Davis hitting the value board a couple times. Oh, my bad. Those percentages were against the top 20, not the top. A little bit different. There you go. It is a little bit more of a mix, given the percentages that we saw, and I'm sure, it gets heavier as you see. It gets heavier direct Jokic a little bit as you scroll down. But the top performing lineups are a little bit more diverse than I was expecting at the center spot, given how skewed the ownership was. So that's kind of interesting. Top lineup in this FanDuel slate, bringing you back $46. That's a little bit of a different site to site. This is against the $5 50,000 to first sim, where that DraftKings one was against the $15. So a little bit different buy-in, but it's a different pay scale. Second lineup there, I don't mind, but I don't love DDR, as we talked about. But Schroeder, Kyrie, Keontae Georgian is who he is, spot, Mo Moody, Devo with upside. I'll take DeRozan in a lineup like this. Randall and Jokic on the back end. I don't mind Jokic and Gordon paired. There's a lot of upside in those two as a pairing. Not that we chase stacks for basketball, but those are two guys who can get there independent of one another. Find a little bit of correlation with one another as well. Not a lot of... Oh, yeah, there's some Cam Johnsons. He actually hit the board a little bit. Some Herb Jones is hitting the board a decent amount up at the top as far as the diverse value guys on the slate. Jaden McDaniels was pretty chalky. Cam Johnson was around the field in the 20s. Markkanen hits the board a little. There's some Luka. What do we have with the Luka lineups? Luka Sabonis on that one. Again, we were heavier on Jokic as far as the $11,000 guys. I just want to see if we got where we got them both. Doesn't look like we got there for the pairing of both $11,000 guys on FanDuel either. We do have a fair number of Luka and Sabonis lineups. So same thing as I said on DraftKings. I think it's more of a case where instead of going Jokic and Luka and paying through the nose for two guys and then going super scrubsy, I think you can go stars and scrubs, but it pays more to go Luka or Jokic and then two of the mid-board guys. Like this one's got Luka, Edwards, and Sabonis. It's also got Collins. That's a reasonably good lineup. It's actually got Jamal Murray in it too. I actually kind of like that lineup. I think those balance out a little bit better. And it is still starsy scrubsy, but it's not as much as you can put into the stars as possible kind of a construction. And it's the same thing with these Jokic lineups. Jokic, Randall, DeRozan. This one's got Kyrie, DeRozan, Randall, and Jokic. So, good amount to work with. For a 4-game slate, this is a lot of good pieces. What's going on, Andy? Evening, gangsters. I was going to make a callback based on the spelling to what Power said before. Those who were here might know. Take his points prop over for free money. For who? Sabonis? Sabonis triple-double is Mamba's hot take. Woo, 11-1. That's kind of reasonable. For that spot, I don't hate that idea. If you're chasing prop bets, I feel like you could do a lot worse than that. Picking up a couple of possessions, probably. Yeah, I could definitely see that. $59 career triple doubles. 58 regular season, it looks like. No, 59. Depends on which one of these things you're looking at. I'm just looking at the top Google results. I didn't even pull up a basketball site to get that. I tell you what, I mean, that is not a bad bet, dude. For 11-1? Had Paolo over yesterday. Oof, those came through. What a game by him. What a start by Paolo. He is off and running on a big seat. He's already a really good player, But this could be like him taking that next big leap, and he is off and running, man. So that is, yeah, killer. Maxi the day before. Nice, dude. Mama's on a roll. Tail Mamba. Yeah, Chris Longo asked before, what about Draymond? Definitely one of the guys that I've got him in that 30-minute range, and I think he's one of the rock-solid guys for being in that range from Golden State. And then it's a total crapshoot from there. And he's one of the guys that I think could play into the 30s. And like you're saying, he could be bringing the ball up for at least part of the game and handle the rock a little bit more and facilitate a little bit more. So, yeah, it's definitely an interesting piece that does pad the potential scoring for Draymond. He just comes up like we saw, but I think he is one of those pieces where he was 17% basically level with the field on FanDuel. He was only 5% in our top 150, a little bit below the field on DraftKings. But if you want to chase the idea of minutes, I have no issues taking him up to, double that ownership, 10, even 12, and change percent. And just chase that upside because it's very, very tangible upside. You're not chasing a pipe dream with that, right? That is basically what Draymond does. So, yeah, anytime you can do something like that where, yeah, you're stepping outside the box of what maybe the slate directly looks like, but it's with something like that makes a whole hell of a lot of sense. I don't have any issues with it. I think it's a reasonably good call. With that in mind, guys, I think that brings us down toward the end here. We've been going about an hour and a half. I'm going to punch out at 6 o'clock on the nose. We'll get an injury report in about a half hour. We'll get stuff updated in case anything changed over the last little bit. I'll tweak the things that need tweaking, which is just, minutes. Not going to mess with anything. But let me get into it. Let me thank you guys for everything, for coming out, hanging out with me all this time. Good turnout today. I know we ran into a bad schedule yesterday. That was my fault. Don't blame anybody for the low numbers yesterday, but I appreciate the hell out of everybody who showed up today. Hit the like if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I want 1,000 subscribers on this channel by the holidays. Check out rotoscouts.com. Every single data point for all 4 major sports right now. Under $1 a day for access to all of it. And I'm going to enhance the content as we go. I'm trying to give you guys the absolute best bang for your buck that you can get. I know that we're a one-man show, but I'm trying my best to keep it rolling and keep it very high-end for you and give you the best possible projections. And access to everything is not going to break the bankroll one way or the other. Under $1 a day for access to everything, weekly, monthly, and quarterly plans available. Rotoscouts.com. I'll stop the plug now. I'll say good luck out there tonight. Somebody go win something. We'll be back for more basketball tomorrow. See you guys.